I owe you nothing. I was crushed. But of course, I didn't say that. I was silent. The person speaking was my then boss, and this was about 4 years ago. And we were in a parking garage at 2 o'clock in the morning. After having just finished a 7-hour meeting with a client, where we had renewed a contract for 9 years and $2 million. So you might wonder, is this the first time that I'd been spoken to like that? Unfortunately, the answer is no. This had been happening for 8 years and 6 different bosses. The reality was that almost every day I was thrown under some proverbial kind of bus. I was being shamed and belittled. I had a boss whose favorite question was, "Are you really that stupid?" All of this while I was growing a book of business that I managed from $2.5 to $33 million. At the same time, I was suffering abuse in a toxic organizational culture. And like all too many of us who suffer from any kind of abuse, I was sure that it was my fault. If I were just smarter or worked harder or tried more, it'd be okay. I'd get through this boss or this situation. I was scared all the time. I don't know what made that night in the garage the final straw for me. But the next morning, I could not get out of bed. After this amazing victory the night before. And it persisted. I had no energy. And so I did what we do when we realize that we're in trouble. I went to the doctor and I asked to be put on antidepressants. Instead, my doctor put me out on immediate medical leave. I was out for 6 months, working on rebuilding my sense of self, my sense of confidence, my feeling that I had anything to contribute to the world. And if I tell the truth, it actually took me another 6 months to really recover and get back to myself. By this point, I had left the company and was out on my own. I'd started my own business. But all too many of us struggle in these kind of situations or know people who are struggling in these kinds of toxic cultures. Yes? Thank you. And study after study reveals that managers and individual contributors are very concerned about bad management and poor organizational culture. So why does this persist? There's a paradox that the same managers who are concerned about culture are also the same people who shame their staff and who are getting promoted. And so the situation gets perpetuated. So let's break this down. What is culture? Every kind of organization has a culture. Our families, our communities, our houses of worship, city, states, and countries have cultures. Little businesses, Fortune 50 transnational corporations, and everything in between. They all have cultures. So when you think of culture, what do you think of? Shout it out.
Family.
Family, thank you.
Rules.
Rules, thank you.
Behaviors.
Behaviors, thank you.
Environment.
Environment, thank you. But do we ever think of civility? It almost seems today like an old-fashioned word. Civility, defined as politeness, being kind to each other, and small behaviors that over time create environments where people feel connected and want to be and work and live. So I am going to propose 3 reasons why these kinds of toxic cultures persist and that we're not taking on the issue of culture. First, even though we just defined it, we're talking about organizational culture. It feels big and amorphous and hard to get your arms around. And if it's so big, then we're concerned that it's going to take away our 2 most precious resources, our time and our money. Second, this is the issue that managers say that they are the most concerned about: retaining and attracting the very best talent. What they haven't done is made the connection between culture and attracting and retaining the best talent, even though intuitively we know that those things are connected, and study after study reveals that they are. The third reason that we're not taking this on. Think about the last time that your company or organization had a conversation about attracting and retaining the best talent. What kinds of strategies did you come up with? And maybe you've never had that conversation in your organization, so you're thinking about it now for the very first time. How would you think about attracting and retaining the best talent? Who thinks foosball table might be a really good idea, right? Or free lunch, or napping pods, right? Or more money or better benefits. And that's because that's what managers think are the reasons that people stay or leave. The problem is, it's not true. The number one reason that people stay or leave a company is because it either aligns or, all too frequently these days, does not align with their personal values. I was brought in by a client to help with issues around productivity. And they had all these signs up proclaiming their corporate values. One of their corporate values was treating everyone like family. And unless this was the most dysfunctional family on the planet, they were not walking their talk. And when I talked to their employees, that was the employees' experience. Just like me, they were being belittled, and they were being undermined, and they were being shamed. And as any parent knows, our children pay way more attention to what we do than what we say. And we keep that when we grow up. And so, if you're gonna say we treat people like family, the good kind, of family? We better model that. Because otherwise, what's going to happen is exactly what was happening in this company. Every time people saw that sign, they felt betrayed. So why is it worthwhile taking on culture? One of the shocking statistics is the frequency that incivility is happening in our workplaces. Incivility, defined as non-standard negative behavior that adversely affects people regardless of your intent to harm. According to Gallup, 25% of people in the workplace in 1998 experienced incivility. Today, that number is 99%. It's terrifying when you think about the impact that this is having on people. Something happens, somebody says something, and immediately there's an impact. And for 78% of people, when something happens, in that moment, they become less committed to their organization. I have so many examples of this. I remember a day when my boss had asked me over and over again to redo a document. And so I would take her feedback and I would go back and I would make the changes and I would bring it back, and she would call me an idiot, and she would ask me to make more changes, and I would go back and I would do it and I would bring it back. She'd call me an idiot and make more changes. There was a meeting I was supposed to go to that night to connect with a customer. It was a social thing, and I blew it off because I didn't care at that point about what was best for the company. So let's talk about what's happening once people get fed up and decide to walk out the door. This is costing our economy $1 trillion in voluntary turnover. Those are people that you have recruited and trained walking out the door. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time with the idea of $1 trillion. So if you made $1 a second, $3,600 an hour, it would take you more than 31,000 years to earn $1 trillion. That's what we are spending on voluntary turnover. People leaving because they no longer want to work with you, because your culture sucks and it is sucking the life out of your people. Well, so this is all wretched, but really, why should we care? I'm going to give you 4 reasons. The first is, statistically, we are at 100% employment in this country. And over the next 10 years, they are projecting that we will have 85 million more jobs than there are people to fill them. This is even taking into account the jobs that are going to be lost to automation and AI. That's more people than live in Germany, more jobs than there are people to fill them. So if we think it's hard now to find great talent, buckle your seatbelts, my friend. Number 2, AI and the new coming age of the machine is going to mean that how we build and sustain cultures is even more important in the future than it has been in the past. The soft skills, things like communication, problem solving, and civility are going to take on much more importance in the future. The third reason. 1 out of every 3 junior and high school students is bullied. And high school students experience negative emotions 70% of the time. So this isn't just happening in some companies some of the time. This is affecting our kids. And fourth, it's affecting our humanity. It's affecting our ability to trust, to connect, to care about the greater good, something more than looking out for number one. So what do we do about this? There are all kinds of ways to take on culture. You can start at the top. You can start at the bottom. You can even start in the middle. You can roll out massive initiatives, or you can start small and grow it over time. You can focus on emotional intelligence and communication and building feelings of trust and safety. You can focus on enneagrams or any other kind of personality test that helps you figure out how people work best together. And I do these things in my company with all kinds of clients. And there are companies that are doing a great job with this today. Southwest Airlines, Four Seasons Hotel. My friend Lou, who was a great television producer that built a significant company in Hollywood while caring about his employees. But a really easy thing to do was created by the Ochsner Foundation Health System. I have a special connection to the Ochsner Health System because I was born in an Ochsner Foundation hospital. Hospitals are taking on culture, because there have been a myriad of studies that have shown that there is a direct impact between the way that doctors and nurses interact with each other and patient outcomes, patient mortality. So the Ochsner Health System created this thing called the 5-10-way rule. And it's super simple. If you're within 10 feet of someone, you make eye contact and you smile. If you're within 5 feet, you say something. Hi, good morning, great shoes. And it's having an impact that they can measure. People are recovering more quickly, and fewer patients die. So what can you do? You may be sitting there thinking, I'm just one person. There's nothing that I can do about this. One of my best friends took the 5-10-way rule to her company, where she is just a little cog in a big wheel. And she was amazed at the difference that it's making. If we make a 5% change, the change over time is enormous. So start to model civility. Start to model connection. Stop having meetings where you invite lots of people that don't need to be there. Stop CCing the whole world on emails. Respect people's time. If you want to go all ninja level, you can be accountable and hold other people accountable. Pay attention to body language and tone. What's true is companies that build a great culture are going to win the war for talent and innovation and excellence. Because when we feel connected to a company as an employee or as a customer, we become loyal. We do things that are in the best interest of that organization. And both the organization and us thrive. And today, more than ever, couldn't we all use a bit more thriving? A bit more civility? Thank you.